No, my grandson's belt. The cry tore through the frozen air, sharper than the Siberian wind at 71 degrees. Her eyes, already blurred by the haze of exhaustion and extreme cold, fixed on what the alpha wolf's jaw carried, a small leather belt, unmistakable. The YAKUT woman's heart stopped before resuming in frantic beats. 1,000 hungry wolves, with yellow eyes glinting in the gloom of the Arctic twilight, surrounded her, but in that instant panic froze her soul, replacing fear with the purest and most devastating fury of a grandmother. She knew she had to act, but how could she face such a horde when the proof that her blood was there, in imminent danger, shattered her last stronghold? What would she do to save her grandson and herself from the white hell opening at her feet? The question echoed in her mind, but the answer didn't come from logical reasoning, but from a much deeper place. A wellspring of ancestral strength that cold and time could not freeze. The sight of the belt, so small and familiar in the beast's mouth, ignited a flame that seemed to have been dormant for generations. Her eyes, previously blurred by exhaustion and fear, now burned with a protective fury, a determination that would make the tiger itself tremble. She was not just a woman, she was a grandmother, a guardian of her lineage, and the spirit of her ancestors flowed in her veins. She clenched her fists, feeling the ice bite her skin, but the physical pain became insignificant compared to the pain in her heart. Her lips, cracked by the cold, moved in an almost inaudible murmur, an ancient prayer, a call to the spirits of ice and wind to give her strength. She raised her chin, and her posture, previously bent by weariness, straightened with a dignity that defied the hungry horde. The alpha wolf, with the belt still in its jaw, growled, as if sensing the change in the atmosphere, the transformation of prey into predator. The YAKUT woman knew she couldn't fight 1,000 wolves with brute force. She needed cunning, wisdom, everything her grandmother and mother had taught her about survival in this unforgiving environment. She remembered stories of how the ancients disoriented packs, how they used sound and illusion to appear larger, more dangerous than they truly were. She took a deep breath, the icy air burning her lungs, and then let out a cry. It was not a cry of panic, but a guttural, deep roar that seemed to come from the depths of the earth, a sound that reverberated in the frozen air and made the younger wolves take a step back. She began to stomp her feet on the icy ground, creating a constant, unsettling rhythm. With her hands, which seemed to have found renewed energy, she picked up 2 pieces of dry wood she carried for starting a fire and began to rub them together forcefully, producing a sharp, shrill creak, a sound that mimicked the lament of a larger creature, or perhaps a noise the wolves couldn't identify, but which disturbed their concentration. The pack, accustomed to the silence of the hunt, became disoriented. Their yellow eyes, previously fixed on her with hunger, now blinked, confused. The alpha wolf, however, stood firm, though a subtle tremor ran through its muscular body. It growled again, trying to reassert its leadership over the pack that was beginning to show signs of hesitation. The YAKUT woman, sensing the opening, took a step forward, then another. Her voice now a low, repetitive chant, an ancestral melody that seemed to weave a spell of confusion around the animals. She didn't attack, didn't provoke directly, but created an aura of unpredictability, of an unknown danger. Her cunning, forged over generations of living with the wild, was in full force. She used the shadows of the sparse trees to create the illusion of rapid movement, of there being more than one figure there. The wolves, predators by instinct, relied on clarity and order. The chaos she introduced was her weapon. In an instant of the pack's distraction, when some wolves began to move away, the alpha, feeling the group's cohesion wane, let out a frustrated growl and, with a sudden movement, dropped the belt. The YAKUT woman didn't hesitate. With a final cry that seemed to tear the veil of twilight, she advanced, not to fight, but to dominate the space, to impose her will. The wolves, their unity broken and their hunger overcome by confusion and self-preservation instinct, began to disperse, vanishing like white ghosts in the icy vastness. She didn't pursue them. Her eyes were fixed on the belt which lay in the snow. With trembling hands, she picked it up, feeling the cold leather, but to her it was warmth, a promise. Tears, now of fierce hope, streamed down her face, freezing, but not before cleansing her soul. The belt was back. Her grandson, she knew, was still out there. The battle was far from over, but the victory against the wolf horde was a testament that her spirit would not be broken. The silence that followed the pack's dispersal was more oppressive than the wolves' howling, denser than the falling snow. The YAKUT woman remained there, motionless for an instant, her grandson's belt clutched to her chest. The cold, previously masked by the adrenaline of the fight, now enveloped her with sharp claws, penetrating her fur clothes and biting into her bones. Her muscles screamed in protest, every fiber of her exhausted body crying out for rest. But rest was a luxury she couldn't afford. Her eyes scanned the vast, desolate white landscape, where the shadows of sparse trees stretched like skeletal fingers. Where could her grandson be? That belt, such an intimate piece of his life, in the mouth of an alpha wolf, the image returned to haunt her, bringing with it a wave of nausea and a blood-chilling fear. She knelt in the snow, not out of weakness, but in an almost ritualistic gesture. The leather of the belt, rough and familiar, was the only tangible proof that her little Aya was still nearby somewhere. The tears that welled in her eyes, warm for a moment, quickly froze into small pearls of ice on her cheeks. They were not tears of despair, but of deep sorrow and an even deeper determination. Ayar, she whispered, her grandson's name sounding like a prayer in the thin air. Her voice failed, but her spirit did not. She remembered stories told by her own grandmother about the strength that resides not in muscles, but in the heart, about how the tiger, however cruel, also held secrets and paths for those who knew how to listen. The YAKUT woman closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply the icy air. She felt a connection to the land, to the spirits of her ancestors who had faced even harsher winters, even more dangerous hunts. They had survived, and she would survive too. She would find Ayar. This certainty, forged in pain and overcoming, was her new fire. With visible effort she stood up. Her knees cracked, but she ignored the pain. Her eyes, previously fixed on the belt, now swept the horizon, searching for any sign, any clue. The direction the wolves took when dispersing could be a start, but the fresh snow and incessant wind had already erased most of the tracks. She clutched the belt again, feeling the texture of the leather under her gloved fingers. It was a beacon, an anchor amidst uncertainty. With every beat of her heart, she felt the urgency of the search, the need to move. There was no time for lament, only for action. The strength that had driven her to repel the pack still pulsed in her veins, now channeled for a new purpose. The YAKUT woman adjusted the furs on her shoulders, checked the small backpack she carried, feeling the weight of the few provisions. Every item was precious, every step calculated. She knew the journey would be long and arduous, that cold and hunger would be her constant companions, but the image of Aya's smile was a sun in her particular winter. She began to walk, choosing a direction that seemed more promising, perhaps to the east, where the mountains rose like silent sentinels. Each step sank into the snow, requiring immense effort, but she did not falter. Her feet, accustomed to the frozen ground, moved with a determined cadence. The light of the Arctic twilight began to fade, plunging the landscape into shades of blue and purple. The night promised to be the coldest she had ever faced, but fear no longer paralyzed her. The Yakut grandmother, guardian of her lineage and her hope, moved forward, a tiny point of resilience against the white immensity, driven by a love that not even the cruelest winter could freeze. The search for Ayar had only just begun. The Arctic night descended heavily, enveloping the landscape in a cloak of almost total darkness, punctuated only by the distant gleam of stars and the snow reflecting the faint light. The YAKUT woman, whose name was Anya, felt the cold tighten its grip, each breath turning into a dense cloud that dissipated in the icy air. Her steps, once firm, were now slower, dragging, but the determination in her eyes, which seemed to hold burning embers, did not wane. Ayar's belt, tucked inside her furs, was a weight and a warmth in her chest, a constant reminder of what drove her. Every fiber of her being cried out for him. She knew that night was the tiger's most dangerous ally. Dangers multiplied, visibility was almost nil, and the risk of hypothermia increased exponentially. But resting was not an option. The image of Ayar's mischievous smile, the way he ran through the village, the sound of his laughter echoing in her memory, all prevented her from stopping. She remembered her mother's lessons, who said that true strength was not the absence of fear, but the courage to act despite it, and that love was the greatest shield against despair. Anya observed every detail of the terrain with almost supernatural attention. Her eyes, accustomed to the gloom, searched for any alteration in the snow, any sign that might indicate the direction Ayar or the wolves had taken. The wind, however, was a tireless enemy, sweeping away tracks and turning the white surface into a blank canvas with every gust. She felt frustration grow, a tight knot in her stomach, but she released it into the cold air, refusing to yield to the despair that threatened to steal her hope. Suddenly her keen eyes caught something. Not a clear track, but a small, almost imperceptible depression in the snow near a cluster of frozen bushes. It was as if something heavy had been dragged there or someone had stumbled. She knelt carefully, feeling the cold penetrate her furs, examining the spot meticulously, her gloved hands touching the snow with reverence. It wasn't definitive, but it was a clue, a faint thread of hope amidst the white, icy labyrinth. That small sign rekindled the flame in her heart, warming it momentarily. She remembered a story told by her grandfather, a legendary hunter, about how the tiger always left breadcrumbs for those who knew how to look for them. "Nature speaks in whispers, my granddaughter," he used to say, "and only patient and attentive hearts can hear it." Anya took a deep breath, absorbing the ancestral wisdom that flowed through generations. She was not alone. The spirits of her family, of her people, guided her every step. With renewed energy, Anya followed the direction indicated by the depression in the snow. Every few meters, she searched for another sign, another whisper from the tiger, her mind sharp as a blade. The cold continued to bite, but her mind was so focused on the search that the physical pain became background noise, almost insignificant. She thought of Ayar, so small and vulnerable, and a wave of tenderness and protection flooded her, giving her a strength that seemed inexhaustible. He needed her, and she would not fail. She walked for hours, the night deepening, the silence broken only by the crunch of snow under her feet, and the distant howl of the wind that seemed to mourn with her. The landscape was monotonous and unforgiving, but Anya saw in it the promise of life, the possibility of finding her grandson. She knew that resilience was not just about surviving, but about maintaining faith and hope, even when all seemed lost and the world turned against her. Finally, in the distance, she spotted a rock formation that would offer temporary shelter from the biting wind. It was a small cave, or perhaps just an alcove, but it seemed like a gift from the spirits. A well-deserved break. She needed to rest, if only for a few hours, to gather strength and plan her next steps. The search for Aya was a marathon, not a sprint. And to win a marathon in Yakutia, one needed wisdom, patience, and unwavering faith. With a sigh that carried the weight of her journey, she headed for the shelter, Aya's belt still warming her chest, the promise of a future reunion. Anya, with a heavy sigh, headed for the shelter. Aya's belt warmed her chest, a promise of reunion. The rocky alcove offered minimal protection from the wind, a refuge. She crawled inside, feeling the cold rock, grateful. The darkness was almost absolute. The silence, broken by the distant howl of the wind, amplified the solitude. She sat down, wrapping herself in her furs. Her body trembled from exhaustion and cold. Aya's belt, beneath her clothes, was her comfort, a tangible link to her grandson. She held it, imagining the warmth of the little one. A tear ran down, freezing. It was not of weakness, but of deep pain and a love that transcended the cold. "Where are you, my little Aya?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. The uncertainty was a heavier burden than the cold. She closed her eyes, visualizing her grandson's face, his curious sparkle, the smile that brightened her days. These memories were embers, keeping her spirit alight. Overcoming the wolves, a miracle, had proven that the human spirit, driven by love, could defy the impossible. The search for Aya demanded patience and unwavering hope. She remembered her grandmother's words, "Even in the darkest night, there is a guiding star. You just need to have faith to find it." She clutched the belt to her chest, seeking that ancestral faith. With gloved hands, she inspected the shelter floor, searching for dry twigs and moss to light a small fire. It would be a symbolic warmth, a gesture of resistance against the tiger. With effort, she removed her gloves, exposing her purplish hands to the icy air, and began to rub the twigs together. The spark took time, but it appeared small and fragile, full of promise. The fire, a tiny, trembling flame, cast dancing shadows, transforming the shelter into a temporary sanctuary. Anya extended her hands to the warmth, feeling life return to her fingers. The smell of smoke, light and woody, was a familiar comfort. She picked up Aya's belt again, holding it near the fire, infusing it with hope and warmth. As she watched the flames, her keen eyes noticed something. On the ground, near where she sat, there was a small, crudely carved piece of wood. It was a toy, a small handmade horse that Aya had received from his father. Anya's heart leaped. She picked it up, feeling the familiar texture of the wood. It was Aya's father's work. The wooden shard was proof. Aya had been there. The discovery was a beacon for Anya, a confirmation that she was on the right path. Hope, which had seemed distant, now burned with the same intensity as the small fire. The rest would be brief, but the certainty that Aya was nearby was sustenance for her soul. With the shard and Aya's belt in her hands, Anya knew that dawn would bring new strength and determination to continue her tireless search. The wooden shard, the small carved horse, was more than a toy. It was a piece of Aya's soul, confirmation of his presence in that icy wilderness. Anya held it with reverence, feeling the rough texture of the wood under her gloved fingers, now slightly warmed by the fire. Tears, previously frozen, streamed freely, not from sadness, but from a deep gratitude and a hope that seemed to melt the ice in her heart. Aya was alive. He had been there. This certainty was a true balm for her exhausted soul, a new breath for her journey. She remembered when Aya's father had carved that horse for the boy, a gift of love. Iya carried it everywhere, an inseparable companion in his snow games. The image of her grandson running with the small horse brought a bitter smile to Anya's cracked lips. He was so small, so vulnerable. The thought of him being alone, exposed to the brutal cold and dangers of the tiger, squeezed her chest with a searing pain. But the wooden shard was a sign, a link. Anya put the wooden horse away with the belt, symbols of her search. The small fire flickered, casting dancing shadows that seemed to tell stories of resilience. She knew she needed to rest, even for a few hours. Her body cried out for rest, but her mind was alert, making plans, recalling survival lessons. Her grandmother always said, "The tiger does not forgive recklessness, but it rewards patience and wisdom." Anya closed her eyes, seeking that ancestral wisdom, asking for guidance from the spirits of the land. Sleep came in short, disturbed flashes, filled with images of Ayar and distant wolf howls. Even in sleep, her hands held the belt and the toy, a protective link. When the first pale rays of dawn tinged the horizon with cold shades of blue and grey, Anya was already awake. The pre-dawn cold was biting, but she felt renewed energy, a clarity of purpose that pushed away exhaustion. The small fire had dwindled to dying embers. She covered them with snow, erasing her trace. The tiger left no room for error. Every step and action had to be calculated. She adjusted her furs, feeling the weight of the remaining provisions. Few but essential. With each breath, the icy air burned her lungs, but she welcomed it as a reminder of her mission. Anya left the shelter, her eyes sweeping the vast, silent landscape. Fresh snow covered most of the tracks, but the depression that had guided her to the shelter was visible. She knelt, examining the ground. There was something else, almost invisible, a small mark in the snow, a subtle scratch. It was tiny, but to Anya, it was a clear whisper from the tiger. She followed the mark, her steps careful. With every meter, she searched for another clue, another anomaly in the snow. The search would be long, but hope, fueled by the certainty of Ayar, was a flame that would not be extinguished. She was not just looking for a grandson, she was defending her lineage, honoring ancestors, and proving that a grandmother's love was the most powerful force against relentless Yakutia. With every step, driven by a love that transcended cold and time, Anya felt closer. She knew she would find Ayar. Anya, driven by a love that transcended cold and time, felt closer. She knew she would find Ayar. Each step, an act of faith, sank into the untouched snow, which now stretched like an immaculate sheet under the pale dawn sun. The wind, which had swept away the tracks the night before, had calmed, leaving the landscape in an almost reverent silence. Anya observed the small mark in the snow, the subtle scratch that had guided her. It was almost imperceptible, but to her trained eyes, it was a promise. She leaned down, touching the snow with the tip of her gloved finger, feeling the texture. It was not a wolf track, nor a child's. It seemed more human, perhaps the tip of a ski or a staff. Hope, which had already burned brightly, now flickered with a new intensity. She followed the mark, her eyes scanning the horizon, searching for any other anomaly. Every 100 meters, the mark reappeared, subtle, almost erased, as if whoever made it wanted to go unnoticed. This intrigued her. Who else would be in the taiga, alone in such brutal conditions? And why would they do it so carefully as not to leave obvious tracks? Stories of her people, about solitary hunters and forest spirits, passed through her mind, but this mark was real, physical. Anya continued her journey, Ayar's belt and wooden horse clutched to her chest beneath her furs. The cold persisted, but the urgency of discovery kept her warm. She felt she was no longer alone in the search. The presence of that other mark, however mysterious, was a sign that Ayar might have found help, or that someone else was involved in his disappearance. This new perspective, while bringing a layer of uncertainty, also somewhat eased the burden of solitude. As she followed the almost invisible trail, Anya began to notice something else. Small pieces of dry moss, which did not belong in that area, appeared here and there like intentionally left breadcrumbs. She knelt, picking up one of the pieces. The moss was slightly crushed, as if it had been carried and then dropped. It was an ancient technique, used by YAKUT hunters to mark a path or leave a secret message for others. Her heart quickened. This was no accident. Someone was deliberately leaving a trail to be found. But who? And why? Anya's mind began to work at high speed, connecting the dots. The alpha wolf with Aya's belt, the wooden shard in the shelter, and now these marks in the moss. Everything seemed to fit into a pattern she couldn't quite decipher yet. She remembered her grandfather, who always said that the taiga was an open book for those who knew how to read its signs. And Anya knew how to read. She followed the signs with new urgency. With every piece of moss, every scratch in the snow, her hope solidified. The trail led her to a denser area of the forest, where the trees offered a little more protection from the wind. The sun, now higher, filtered through the snow-covered branches, creating a play of light and shadow that made her feel more alert. Suddenly, the moss trail and the marks in the snow ended abruptly in a small clearing. In the center, there was a recently extinguished campfire, still emitting a faint smoke. Beside it in the snow was a small, familiar leather pouch. It was her son's provision pouch, Ayar's father. Anya's heart leapt, a mix of relief and dread. He was here. He was looking for Ayar too. But why hadn't he waited? And why would he leave the pouch? She approached, her eyes welling up, touching the pouch with trembling hands. Inside, there were some dried fruits, a piece of smoked meat, and, carefully folded, a small scarf. It wasn't just any scarf, it was the scarf Ayar always wore, embroidered with the family emblem, a wolf howling at the moon. And next to the scarf, a note, written in YAKUT in her son's handwriting. "Mother, Ayar is with the hunters from the neighboring village. I found them. I'm going ahead to ensure he's safe. Follow me. Don't stop." Anya read the note repeatedly, the words dancing before her eyes. Ayar was alive. He was safe. Relief hit her with overwhelming force, making her legs buckle. She fell to her knees in the snow, tears streaming freely, but this time they were tears of pure joy and gratitude. The turning point had arrived. Her son, her hunter, had found Ayar and was blazing the trail. The search was no longer solitary nor uncertain. There was a destination, a clear direction, and the promise of a reunion. Anya stood up, exhaustion vanishing, replaced by renewed energy. She wasn't just following tracks, she was following hope, guided by her family's love. Anya stood up, exhaustion replaced by renewed energy. She wasn't just following tracks, she was following hope, guided by family love. Her son's note, crumpled in her hands, was a treasure. Ayar was alive, and his father was with him, blazing a trail to the neighboring village. A wave of deep gratitude flooded her, making her gasp in the icy air. She raised her eyes to the pale sky, a silent thanks to the spirits of the taiga and her ancestors. Anya carefully folded the note, putting it away with Ayar's belt and the small wooden horse. Symbols of a journey about to have a happy ending. The recently extinguished campfire and the provision pouch, a reminder of her son's care. She picked up the pouch, feeling the familiar weight of the dried fruits and smoked meat. Her son, an experienced hunter, knew she would need sustenance. This simple gesture warmed her heart more than the fire. With a clear mind and light heart, Anya adjusted her furs. Her steps, previously heavy with uncertainty, were now agile and full of purpose. She no longer needed to decipher the tiger's whispers. Her son had left a clear path, ski marks in the snow, deeper and more consistent than the previous scratches. He had moved quickly, driven by the same urgency of protection. The landscape, previously hostile and endless, now revealed itself with new beauty. Snow-covered trees glittered under the weak sun. The forest's silence seemed an invitation, not a threat. Anya felt a deeper connection to the land. The taiga, which had tested her strength and faith, now seemed to embrace her, guiding her towards reunion. As she followed the ski marks, Anya imagined her son, strong and determined, protecting Ayar. Pride filled her chest. He had become the man his father had dreamed of, a guardian of the family and the village. Concern for Ayar still existed, a gentle pang, but tempered by the certainty that he was not alone. The journey continued for hours. The cold persisted, but Anya barely felt it. Her mind focused, senses sharpened. She observed every detail of the path, looking for new signs from her son. The ski marks were constant, but every now and then she found something more. An unusual broken branch, a specifically turned stone. These were the secret signs YAKUT hunters used to communicate, to confirm the path. Her son was thinking of her, guiding her, even from a distance. Anya smiled. The connection between them, forged by years of love and respect, was unbreakable. She remembered her small son, running in the snow, dreaming of being a great hunter. Now he was. He used all his knowledge to ensure Ayar's safety and reassure his mother. The sun began to set, painting the sky orange and purple. Night approached, but Anya no longer felt the dread from before. There was a clear destination, a promise of warmth and safety. The neighboring village was not far. Her son's ski marks became more frequent, and the terrain changed, indicating a more inhabited area. Suddenly, she heard a sound. It wasn't the howl of the wind, nor the crunch of snow. It was distant, unmistakable. Dog barks, the sound of a village. Anya's heart pounded, emotion hitting her. Warm tears streamed down, melting the ice. She quickened her pace, exhaustion forgotten, driven by a deep force. Ayar was close. The promise of reunion was just a few steps away. Anya quickened her pace, exhaustion forgotten, driven by a deep force. Ayar was close. The promise of reunion was just a few steps away. The dog barks, previously distant, were now clearer, mingling with the crackle of campfires and voices muffled by the wind. A flickering light appeared among the trees, a beacon of warmth and life in the icy vastness. It was the village, a cluster of wooden and fir cabins, enveloped in a haze of smoke that gently rose to the starry sky. With her heart pounding in her chest, Anya emerged from the forest, her tear-filled eyes sweeping the scene. Near the main campfire, where some figures warmed themselves, she saw a tall, strong man, his back to her. The silhouette was unmistakable. "Son!" Her voice came out hoarse, a whisper that turned into a shout. The man turned abruptly. Their eyes met. It was him, her son, Ayar's father. He ran towards her, snow flying under his feet. In seconds, his strong arms enveloped her in a tight embrace, an embrace that carried the weight of days of anguish and the sweetness of relief. Anya felt the warmth of his body, the familiar scent of smoke and fur, and collapsed in tears, sobbing against his shoulder. "Mother, you're all right," he murmured, his voice choked with emotion, holding her even tighter. "I knew you'd come. I knew." As they separated, his hands held her face, examining her with concern. "Ayar, where is Ayar?" Anya asked, her voice still trembling. Her son smiled, a tired smile but full of joy. "He's here, Mother, safe. The hunters found him wandering near a frozen stream, a little confused but unharmed. He was with them, warm and fed." He guided her to the campfire, where other villagers watched them with looks of admiration and relief. And there, sitting on a log, wrapped in a sheepskin, was Ayar. His large, curious eyes widened when he saw Anya. "Grandma!" he cried, his childish voice filling the air. He stood up and ran, stumbling in the snow, straight into Anya's open arms. Anya knelt, tears streaming freely as she embraced her grandson. Ayar's small, warm body against hers was the greatest gift. Proof that her faith had not been in vain. She hugged him tightly, feeling the sweet scent of child and smoke, the warmth of his skin through the furs. "My little Ayar, my love," she whispered, kissing his hair. "You are safe." Ayar hugged her back with a child's strength, his face nestled in her shoulder. He was a little pale, but his eyes shone with the same mischievous spirit as always. Anya took Ayar's belt and the small wooden horse from inside her clothes, handing them to her grandson. Ayar took the objects with reverence, a wide smile spreading across his face. "My belt! My horse!" he exclaimed, hugging his lost treasures. That moment, with Ayar safe in her arms, the belt and the horse back with their owner, was the reward for every step, every breath of icy air, every silent prayer. The villagers approached, offering words of welcome and admiration. An older woman with a gentle smile brought a bowl of hot broth, its steam rising in comforting spirals. Anya accepted, feeling the warmth spread through her body. She looked at her son, at Ayar, at the warmth of the campfire, and at the friendly faces around her. The tiger had tested her strength, but her family's love and human connection had prevailed. The legend of the grandmother who faced 1,000 wolves was already beginning to be whispered. But for Anya, the true victory was having Ayar back, safe and warm, the future of her lineage secured. Anya remained kneeling in the snow, cradling Ayar, the outside world fading before that embrace. The scent of a child, the soft breath against her neck, were more precious than any treasure. Her son, with tear-filled eyes, knelt beside them, enveloping both in a family embrace that brought deep relief. For a moment, the three formed an island of warmth and love in the midst of vast, icy Yakutia, an image of resilience and unity that spoke for itself. The villagers, respectful, kept their distance, but their warm gazes and gentle smiles were a balm for Anya's soul. The older woman, who had brought the broth, now approached again, extending the bowl to Anya's son. He accepted it with a grateful nod, offering it to Anya. "Drink, mother. You need strength," he said, his voice still choked with emotion. Anya took a sip of the broth, feeling the warmth descend her throat. Warming her from the inside out, it was a simple taste, but full of nourishment and care. She felt a wave of gratitude for those strangers who had become family that night. Ayar, now calmer, looked at her with his large, curious eyes. "Grandma, you came for me," he said, his voice full of admiration. "I knew you would come." Anya smiled, a smile that reached her tired eyes. "Always, my little one, always." She stroked his hair, feeling its softness under her gloves. "Are you all right? Are you not hurt?" "Just a little cold," Ayar replied, shrugging. "The hunters gave me furs and food. They are good." Anya's son explained to the villagers, with pride in his voice, the story of his mother's journey, from the confrontation with 1,000 wolves to the tireless search, guided only by love. With every word, the villagers' gazes deepened in admiration. They had already heard of the wolf woman, but seeing her there with her grandson in her arms was different. It was the living proof of the legend. Anya, for her part, felt that the true legend was not about her physical strength, but about the strength of the love that drove her. She looked at her son, whose presence there was a testament to his own resilience and love for Ayar. He had found the boy and guided his mother, fulfilling his role as guardian. The pride she felt for him was immense. "We need to thank these brave hunters," Anya said, looking at the men who had rescued Ayar. They approached modest, but with a gleam of satisfaction in their eyes. Anya stood up. Ayar still nestled in her arms and made a deep bow, a gesture of ancestral respect. "May the spirits of the tiger bless them for their kindness and courage." The hunters responded with nods, honored. One of them, a man with a weathered face, said, "It was the tiger that guided us, Elder, and the strength of your love for this boy." Anya felt a warmth in her chest, human connection, altruism, the sense of community. These were the true pillars of survival in Yakutia. It wasn't just about facing nature, but about supporting each other. Night advanced, and the cold intensified, but the warmth of the campfire and human company were an impenetrable shield. Her son helped her sit near the fire, Ayar still nestled in her lap. As Ayar fell asleep, exhausted, Anya watched the dancing flames. The belt and the small wooden horse, now tucked into Ayar's pocket, were more than objects. They were symbols of an epic journey, of a love that defied the impossible. She felt that her mission was not yet complete. They needed to return to their own village, to share the joy of the reunion, and for Ayar to fully recover. The journey back would be different. No longer a desperate search, but a triumphant return, guided by hope and the certainty that the family was united. Weariness still weighed heavily, but Anya's mind was clear. The tiger had taught valuable lessons, and she would carry them with her. The legend of her courage would echo, but what truly mattered was the warmth of her grandson in her arms, the promise of a future for her lineage. Anya, with Ayar asleep in her lap, felt the weight of the world dissipate. The future of her lineage, once uncertain, now rested there, small and warm, in her arms. The campfire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the faces of the villagers, who gradually retreated to their cabins, leaving a reverent silence. Her son, sitting beside her, watched Ayar with a look of deep tenderness and relief. He had provided extra furs so Anya and Ayar could rest comfortably. "Mother, you need a restorative sleep," he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion and fatigue. "Tomorrow we will begin the journey back home. The hunters of this village have offered a sled and some supplies to help us." Anya merely nodded, unable to speak. Words seemed too small to express the gratitude she felt, not only for her son, but for the entire community that had welcomed them. She held Ayar closer, feeling the boy's regular heartbeat. The legend of her courage might echo, but for her, the true feat was the miracle of life, of family reunited. The next morning, the pale sun had barely broken the horizon when the village began to stir. The air was even more biting, but a sense of optimism hung in the air. Ayar, refreshed by sleep and food, was already playing with the small wooden horse, his childish laughter echoing through the clearing. Anya watched him, a soft smile on her lips. The paleness of his face had diminished, and the energy of a child shone again in his eyes. The villagers gathered for the farewell. The older woman, with the same gentle smile, handed Anya a small package of dried herbs and a piece of smoked meat for the journey. "May the spirits of the tiger protect you on your way back, Elder," she said, her eyes conveying deep respect. Anya's son had prepared a sturdy sled, pulled by 2 well-trained sled dogs. He had loaded the provisions and furs, ensuring Ayar traveled warm and safe. "Mother, you and Ayar will go on the sled," he instructed, his voice firm but full of care. "I will go ahead, breaking the trail." Anya nodded, feeling the weight of shared responsibility. The journey back would not be easy, but it would be different. There would no longer be the anguish of the search, only the joy of return. She helped Ayar nestle into the sled's furs, watching the boy hug his wooden horse with pure contentment. As they prepared to leave, one of the hunters who had found Ayar approached Anya. "Elder," he began, his voice serious, "the alpha wolf you faced. He was seen again, far from here, leading his pack south. It seems your bravery made them retreat from our lands forever." Anya listened, her eyes fixed on the white vastness. The confrontation with the wolves seemed a distant memory, almost a fever dream, but Ayar's belt, carefully kept, was proof that it had all been real. She felt a strange peace regarding those animals. They were part of the tiger, and she, part of them. Nature had tested her, and she had responded. With a final nod to the villagers, who watched them with admiration, Anya's son gave the signal. The sled dogs began to move, and the sled glided smoothly over the snow. Anya leaned back, Ayar in her lap, feeling the icy wind on her face. The white, endless landscape stretched ahead, but now it was no longer a place of despair, but a path home. Every snow-covered tree, every distant mountain seemed to greet them. She looked at her son, who walked ahead with firm steps, and at Ayar, who had already fallen asleep again, lulled by the sled's movement. The legend of her courage would echo, yes, but the true story was the love that united that family, the silent strength that propelled them through the harshest winter. Anya's heart filled with renewed hope, a certainty that together they could face any challenge Yakutia presented them. The journey home was a new beginning, a testament to human resilience and the unbreakable power of love. The sled glided, a soft whisper over the virgin snow, carrying Anya and Ayar home. Her son, ahead, broke the trail with firm, determined steps, his body a strong silhouette against the white landscape. The icy wind still bit, but Anya, with Ayar nestled in her lap, felt a different warmth, a warmth that came from within, from a heart overflowing with gratitude. She watched her son, pride swelling in her chest. He had become the man his father, long deceased, had always dreamed of, a pillar of strength and wisdom for the family and the village. The journey back was long, but every kilometer traveled was a silent celebration of life, unity, and triumph. Ayar, waking from his sleep, stretched and looked at Anya with a sleepy smile. "Grandma, are we almost home?" he asked, his voice still a little muffled. Anya kissed his forehead. "Yes, my little one. We're almost there. Your mother and grandfather are waiting." The mention of his mother made Ayar's eyes gleam with renewed anticipation. He began to hum a childish melody, a joyful sound that broke the tiger's silence. Anya felt a warm tear stream down her face, not from sadness, but from a joy so profound it hurt. They traveled for another day and a half, stopping only to rest and eat what Anya's son had prepared. At each stop, Anya's son lit a small fire, and the three huddled together, sharing stories and the comforting warmth of the fire. Anya told Ayar about the spirits of the forest and the courage of the hunters, and the boy listened, fascinated, his eyes reflecting the flames. Anya's son, in turn, watched his mother and son, a soft smile on his lips, content to see them safe and happy. On the afternoon of the second day, Anya's son stopped abruptly. He raised his hand, signaling to Anya. "Mother, I smell smoke, and I see something on the horizon." Anya leaned forward, her experienced eyes scanning the distance. Yes, there it was, a faint column of smoke, denser and more familiar than that of the neighboring village, rising into the pale sky. And amidst the trees, a glow. It wasn't the sun reflecting on the snow. It was the glow of a larger fire, of many fires. It was their village. Anya's heart pounded. The exhaustion she had ignored for days threatened to fell her, but the strength of emotion was greater. She hugged Ayar tightly, who now pointed and cried out with excitement, "Grandma, it's our home! It's our village!" Anya's son quickened his pace, the sled dogs responding to his urgency. The sound of the village dogs barking became audible, mingling with joyful voices and the buzz of an awaiting community. As they emerged from the forest, the scene that unfolded before her eyes was a balm for Anya's soul. The village was celebrating. Campfires crackled, casting light and warmth on familiar faces. Women, men, and children were gathered, some with lit torches, their eyes fixed on the trail leading to the forest. When they saw the sled approach, a cry of joy and relief echoed, rising to the icy skies. "They're here! They're back!" The first to run towards them was Ayar's mother, her face marked by worry, but now illuminated by radiant hope. She threw herself into her husband's arms, tears streaming freely. Then her eyes found Ayar, and she ran to the sled, pulling her son into a tight embrace. My son, my love, you're all right, she sobbed, kissing him repeatedly. Ayar laughed, hugging his mother with the same intensity. Anya stepped down from the sled, her legs a little shaky, but her spirit unyielding. The villagers gathered around her, some embracing her, others touching her hands with reverence. "Elder Anya, you did it! You brought Ayar back!" exclaimed a man, his voice choked with emotion. An older woman, her longtime friend, hugged her tightly. "The legend is true, Anya. You are the guardian of our people." Anya looked at the faces of her community, at her reunited family. The cold of Yakutia, the 1,000 hungry wolves, the desperate search, all seemed distant, eclipsed by the warmth of that moment. Ayar, now in his mother's arms, looked at Anya with admiration. Her son, beside her, held her hand firmly. The legend of her courage, which had begun with the confrontation in the taiga, now solidified there, in the heart of her village, a living testament to the power of family love and the indomitable resilience of the Yakut spirit. The return was not just the end of a journey, but the beginning of a new era of hope and unity for all. The return was not just the end of a journey, but the beginning of a new era of hope and unity for all. Ayar's mother, her face bathed in tears of relief, clutched her son with a strength that spoke of days and nights of agony. Her kisses covered the boy's face, and her words, once whispers of despair, were now songs of gratitude. Anya's son, Ayar's father, enveloped his wife and son in an embrace that sealed the family, an unbreakable bond forged in adversity. Anya watched the scene, a soft, tired smile on her lips. Every fiber of her being radiated a deep peace. Physical exhaustion eclipsed by the fullness of her heart. The villagers, with looks of admiration and respect, made way for Anya. Gentle hands touched her. Choked voices murmured words of praise. An older woman with tear-filled eyes held Anya's hands firmly. "Elder, you are the strength of our people. Your courage inspires us all." Anya merely nodded, unable to utter words, but her eyes conveyed the gratitude and connection she felt. She sat near the main campfire, where the heat danced and pushed away the biting cold. Ayar, still in his mother's arms, reached out a small hand to Anya, a gesture of love and recognition. The grandmother pulled him close, feeling the warmth of his small body and his soft breath. The belt and the small wooden horse, now tucked into Ayar's pocket, were more than objects. They were tangible proof of a miracle. As Anya's son explained the details of the journey, how his mother had faced the wolf pack and the tireless search, the villagers listened in reverent silence. With every word, the legend rooted itself deeper in everyone's hearts. It was no longer a distant tale, but a living truth, a testament to Yakut resilience. Anya, for her part, felt that the true story was not about the strength of her arms, but about the strength of the love that drove her. It was about the connection that united them, mutual help, the unwavering belief in family. Ayar's mother brought a steaming bowl of broth to Anya, and the grandmother accepted with a nod. The familiar and nourishing taste spread through her body, warming her from the inside out. She felt her energy slowly returning, but what truly nourished her was the human warmth around her. Ayar, now calmer, fell asleep again in Anya's lap, lulled by the village's murmur and the crackle of the campfire. Anya's son sat beside her, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "Mother, you brought hope back to us," he said, his voice full of deep emotion. Night advanced, but the celebration continued. Low songs and ancient melodies began to emerge, telling the story of the grandmother who defied the tiger and the wolves for her grandson. Anya listened, her heart overflowing. She had faced the harshest winter, hunger, fear, and solitude, but she had found her way back, not just to Ayar, but to herself, to her community. Yakutia, with its relentless beauty and brutal challenges, had tested her soul, and found it unbreakable. The resolution was not just the reunion, but the renewal of faith, the certainty that love was the most powerful force against any adversity. The future of Anya's lineage was secure, Ayar was home, and the village was stronger, more united than ever. The legend of Anya, the wolf woman, would be told for generations, a beacon of courage and love in the icy heart of Yakutia. An eternal testament to indomitable human resilience. The legend of Anya, the wolf woman, would be told for generations, a beacon of courage and love in the icy heart of Yakutia. An eternal testament to indomitable human resilience. On that night of reunion, the village vibrated with a joy that defied the cruelest cold. The campfires crackled louder, and the songs, once whispered, now echoed with renewed fervor. Anya, with Ayar asleep in her arms, felt the weight of the world dissipate. The future of her lineage, once uncertain, now rested there, small and warm, in her arms, a living promise of continuity. The days that followed were days of recovery and quiet celebration. Ayar, invigorated by love and safety, quickly regained his childish energy. His eyes, once marked by the fear of the tiger, now shone with the innocence and curiosity natural to his age. The small wooden horse and the leather belt, symbols of his adventure and the love that rescued him, were carefully kept, told and retold in nightly stories. Anya watched him, a soft smile on her lips, her heart overflowing with a gratitude that words could not express. Anya, for her part, felt exhaustion transform into a deep peace. Her body, previously tense and alert, relaxed under the warmth of the furs and the family's affection. The villagers looked at her with even greater reverence, not only for the feat of facing 1,000 wolves, but for the strength of spirit she radiated. Her words, once heard with respect, now carried the weight of wisdom tested and proven by the wild itself. Women came to her for advice, and men, previously more reserved, now greeted her with deep nods, recognizing in her the guardian of their people. Her son, Ayar's father, had transformed. The anguish of loss and the joy of reunion had shaped him into a more mature man, aware of his role. He cared for Anya with renewed devotion, ensuring her comfort and rest, and watched Ayar with a look of deep tenderness and relief. Ayar's mother, in turn, did not separate from her son, her constant kisses and hugs, a silent testament to the terror she had felt and the joy of having him back. The family, once shaken, was now more united and stronger than ever. With the arrival of spring, the tiger began to awaken, and with it, new hope blossomed in the village. The stories of Elder Anya, the wolf woman, were no longer just legends, but living truths that inspired every child and every adult. They spoke not only of bravery, but of the unbreakable strength of maternal love and human resilience in the face of the impossible. The children, including Ayar, played, reenacting the search, with the leather belt as a treasure and the wooden horse as a symbol of hope. Anya, sitting by the campfire, watched her family and her community. The cold of Yakutia would remain, nature's challenges would be eternal, but she knew that the spirit of her people was stronger. Love, human connection, and ancestral wisdom were the true shields against any adversity. The legend of her courage would echo, yes, but what truly mattered was the warmth of her grandson in her arms, the promise of a future for her lineage, and the certainty that, together, they could face any winter, any pack, any challenge life presented them. Yakutia had tested her soul and found it unbreakable, an eternal testament to indomitable human resilience. Yakutia had tested her soul and found it unbreakable, an eternal testament to indomitable human resilience. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, bringing the promise of a spring that slowly blossomed in the white vastness. The snow receded, revealing the dormant earth, and the rivers, once frozen, murmured songs of thaw. In the village, life followed its ancestral rhythm. but with a new meaning, a spark of hope that Anya had rekindled in everyone's hearts. Anya, the wolf woman, was no longer just a respected elder. She was the embodiment of the strength and love that kept her people united. Her eyes, which had seen the tiger's fury and the gleam of hope, now carried a deep serenity. She spent her days teaching the children about medicinal plants and stories of the forest spirits. The village women sought her for advice. Every wrinkle on her face told a story of overcoming. Every gesture of her calloused hands conveyed a wisdom that went beyond words. Ayar, the little grandson, was the renewed joy of the village. His light steps and crystalline laughter echoed through the cabins, a constant reminder of the miracle Anya had performed. He grew strong and curious, always with the small wooden horse and the leather belt, now lovingly mended, close to him. Anya watched him play, her heart filling with an unspeakable tenderness. She saw in him not only the future of her lineage, but the continuity of the values she cherished so much: courage, compassion, and an unwavering connection to the land and her people. Anya's son, Ayar's father, had matured remarkably. The experience of loss and reunion had transformed him into a more thoughtful and compassionate leader. He worked tirelessly to ensure the well-being of the village, always consulting his mother, seeking her wisdom in every decision. Ayar's mother dedicated herself to her son with renewed love, her constant hugs and kisses a balm for the wounds of the past. The family, once on the brink of despair, was now a beacon of unity and resilience for the entire community. The nights in the village were filled with the stories of Elder Anya. Around the campfires, under Yakutia's starry cloak, tales of her bravery and unconditional love were retold, gaining new nuances with each narration. The children listened, fascinated, dreaming of their grandmother's courage, and the adults reflected on the silent strength that resided within each of them. The legend was not just about facing 1,000 wolves. It was about the ability to overcome fear, to fight for what is right, and to find hope in life's most adverse conditions. Anya, sitting by the campfire, felt the warmth on her face and peace in her soul. She looked at Ayar, asleep in her lap, and at her son and daughter-in-law, whose eyes shone with gratitude and love. The harsh winter had passed, and with it the most difficult test of her life. She learned that true strength was not in muscles, but in the heart, in the stubbornness of hope, and in the invisible web that united her family and village. Yakutia would continue to test them, but Anya knew her people were stronger, more united, and wiser. Love was the shield, ancestral wisdom, the safe guide for generations. Under the Yakutian sky, the legend of Anya, the wolf woman, was not just a story, but a living promise of a future where human resilience would always triumph, an eternal testament to the unbreakable power of love.